It is my tremendous honor to guide our sit today on behalf of the Board of Directors of IJS and in loving appreciation of our teacher, Rabbi Myriam Klotz. This practice for so many of us has really been inspired and enriched and supported by our beloved teacher and guide, Myriam. We are so grateful for you and all the Torah you have instilled in us. As I was looking at the chat leading up to the formal beginning of our sit, just taking in so many people in need of healing. And for me, your Torah has been healing. And so my hope and prayer is that we will just continue to share that Torah in loving appreciation of all that you have given us today and onwards. So friends, in addition to honoring Myriam and her retirement from IJS, I invite you to close your eyes and just take a moment to thank yourself for showing up to your practice. And take another moment to thank each other for showing up. It's always a gift under any circumstance to engage in the practice of paying attention to our hearts, but especially today in this constellation of human beings filled with so much gratitude and love for our beloved teacher. So let's take our seat as we begin together. Your eyes, as always, can be open or closed or anywhere in between. And just take a moment to be present to your arrival, to your beginning. Take some cleansing breaths, some big inhales through the nose and perhaps exhaling through the mouth, even audibly. And then allow your breath to find a rhythm that is steady and fluid. Just feeling yourself called to witness your breath. Watching this exchange of breath and air, internal and external. A kind of coming home again and again and again. I invite you to gently note in your mind why you came to practice today. And allow that to be a kavanah, not a goal or an expectation. Simply an invitation to your heart to open in that direction. May we not only meet this moment, but allow this moment to meet us in that spirit. And may we meet each other in our open-heartedness and allow the divine to dwell among us. When you're ready to open your eyes, if you've closed them, just gently notice what you notice. So it is quite humbling to teach before your teacher. So this feels a little like a da lifnei mi ata omed, know before whom you stand kind of moment, except for in this case, Myriam's presence and voice speaks to me very clearly, reminding me just to be myself and to listen deeply for God's voice, to dwell in my body, to speak from my heart, from my own truth. And so that's exactly what I'm going to do and invite you all to do the same. So if whatever I have to offer lands for you in a supportive and helpful way, use it. And if it's not of service, trust yourself and be guided by your own spirit even as we all dwell here together. So it's not difficult to find inspiration for our practice today in this week's Torah portion. In Parshat Truma, God tells Moshe to create a dwelling place for God, where the Israelites can bring their gifts to the Holy One and feel God's presence. And the gifts can be of any kind, from any person, whoever's heart so moves them. So let's take a look at that famous invitation in our text. Rachel, if you can bring that up, that would be great. This very beautiful, beautiful line, Ve'asu li mikdash v'shachanti betocham. And let them make me, God, a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them. And of course, what immediately stands out is the last word. We might imagine that this text could have read, and let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell in it. But that's not what the text says. Rather, we're told to build a sanctuary so that God will dwell among them, among us. And I cannot think of a more perfect text for Myriam's Torah. So I wanted to share just briefly a couple of other commentaries which might expand our understanding of what this might mean for us today. So first, from the Malbim, each one of us needs to build God a mishkan, a tabernacle, in the recesses of our hearts by preparing oneself to become a sanctuary for God and a place for the dwelling of God's glory. And from the Midrash, Exodus Rabbah, open up for me, my sister, my friend. This is a beautiful line from Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs. For how long must I travel without a home? So the Torah says, make for me a sanctuary so that I need not be on the outside. And finally, a more modern, but I would say a sacred text from Brian Stevenson from the book Just Mercy. You can't understand most of the important things from a distance, Brian. You have to get close. So Rachel, you can take our text away. Myriam has taught me, and I imagine so many of us, these very things, that our bodies can be a dwelling place for the divine, that the spiritual practices of embodied movement, meditation, and Torah study are the very gifts that we all can bring to our respective sanctuaries. That when we each really attend to the individual mishkan, that is us, our body and our soul, we really honor the beauty and diversity of each unique creature. We can't help but to feel God's presence. And finally, none of this can happen purely out there in the abstract. This is the work of truly building a space in our bodies, in our hearts, in community, in the felt presence of other living beings, close, as Stevenson says, so that God's whisper can be heard and God's presence can be felt. I was thinking about one of my favorite prayers that we say traditionally in the morning tefillah that also uses this word mishkan. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. And it continues, Ashrenu ma tov chelkenu uma na'im goralenu uma yafa Yerushatenu. How good are your tents, Each one of us a tent, each one of us a body that can hold God's presence. And also these mishkenotecha, these dwelling places that we get to create inside ourselves and with each other. How sweet is this spiritual path of Judaism that belongs to each one of us. And that is how I feel when I sit before Myriam, how grateful and fortunate I am, and that we are to sit in this tent of meeting, in this Mishkan, exactly as we are, and just soak up the blessings that can be found here. So let's prepare to sit again with the invitation to make ourselves, or perhaps to prepare ourselves to be a sanctuary for God's presence to dwell. So I invite you to find your seat again. Your eyes, of course, can be open or closed or anywhere in between. And you may want to invite a little movement into your body, or just adjust your seat to support your capacity to experience some momentary stillness here. I invite you to take a breath to signal to your body and to our collective body that we are indeed a place fitting for spirit, capital S. So a full breath in and a full breath out. Notice if you can actually breathe into the heart. The front of the heart, the back of the heart. Breathing into the many rooms of the heart. I invite you to keep breathing with a gentle and steady rhythm while you bring your attention to any way in which God's presence is moving in and between us. You can choose to observe it by witnessing the movement of your breath. You may feel it by scanning in the body, beginning with your feet. You might sense it in the passing of thoughts and feelings, sensation. Soften where you can as we build this Mishkan together. And I'll bring us together in a couple of minutes with the sound of my voice. Begin to deepen your breath. And I invite you to place one hand onto your heart. Into our hearts, we place gratitude for the chance to come together, to sit, to breathe, to learn, to listen, to heal, and to honor our beloved teacher. In appreciation of the gift of her presence, we affirm our own commitments to be present in our bodies and in our lives, so that the Holy One can dwell among all of us. We place in our hearts the knowledge that this Mishkan is for us to build together again and again and again. And we offer thanks for knowing that the tools we possess to build it have been lovingly planted within us. You can keep your eyes closed or open them as we close with a prayer inspired by the words of our Torah portion. Rachel, if you can bring up the text, that would be great. And I invite you to join with me in song or simply energetically. Oh God, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true, and in thanksgiving I'll be a living sanctuary for you. Ve'asuli mikdash ve'shachanti betocham v'anachnu nevarech Yah me'ata ve'ad olam. Turn it back over to Rabbi Mark.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Jenny. Friends, let's seal that beautiful practice today by offering an opportunity for those of you who are in mourning. And of course, in our community, there's so much heartbreak right now that we want to acknowledge, and invite those of you who are not reciting Kaddish, please stay present. For those who are, you are invited, if you are reciting the Kaddish, to put the name or names of anyone you're honoring today or holding in your heart, either now or after we recite the Kaddish. Thanks to Rachel for sharing the words on the screen. And if you're joining me, please rise in body or in spirit, and you can unmute at this time. Yitgadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah, B'mad Shabbat, Hayechon, Yom Yechon, Hayeh Dechol, Beit Yisrael, Hagala, Hagid, Shmei Rabba Barak, Barach, Yishavach, Yishar, Yitaleh, Yitalal, Shemei Kedusha, Ha'ela, Mikol Birchata, B'shbachata, B'nefashata, Ba'al Myriam, Amen.
Shalom Rabba
Shemayim
Chaim Aleinu
Mikayim Aleinu V'Yoko Yisrael V'Yamru Amen.
Shalom
Shalom
Uyaseh
Uyaseh
Shalom
Shalom
Aleinu
Aleinu V'Yoko
V'Yoko
Yisrael
Yoko
V'Yamru
Hebrew.
Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Friends, thank you so much for joining us today. If you're leaving us now, hope you'll join us another day this week or any day this week. I'm putting in the chat our lineup of wonderful teachers this week. Tomorrow, Rabbi Adam Klickfeld of Temple Beth Am in LA will be leading us. Wednesday, Kohenet Kasher Halef Fife of the IJS faculty. Thursday, Rabbi Myriam Nicolescu. And on Friday, which is Rosh Chodesh Adar, as always, on Rosh Chodesh will be led by Sarah Waxman of At the Well to sit into Shabbat together and to greet the new month of Adar. I want to thank the IJS board for sponsoring today's sit and loving honor of our beloved teacher and friend, Rabbi Myriam Klotz. And there's some beautiful brachot, beautiful blessings offered in the chat for Myriam. For those of you who have learned with or know Myriam and you'd like to continue to offer those blessings, chat is open. Please keep them coming. And Myriam, hope you keep absorbing, receiving those blessings. As always, you're invited to use the chat just to share reflections on your experience with today's practice or to raise a question. If it's a question, please write question all in caps. And I'll keep an eye out for that and try to work it into our conversation over the next few minutes with Rabbi Jenny Solomon. Also, just want to mention that although we're meeting every day this week, next week, the IJS staff, the whole staff will be on retreat. And so there will be no live sessions next week for the full week. We'll be back the following week. I do want to note that next Wednesday, the 12th of March, will mark the 5th anniversary of the daily sit. And hope people can join us then. Mark your calendar for that one. So just, of course, all our sessions are recorded. We have hundreds of meditations on our YouTube channel. So we hope you'll avail yourself of the opportunity to practice with those. I'm going to keep an eye out for questions in the chat. And Jenny, thank you so much. And Mazal Tov again to you on the upcoming Bar Mitzvah. What a great harmonic convergence we got going on here.
I know. It's, we continue to live in such heartbreaking times. And I'm really trying to use this time to, at least in equal measure, just soak up the joy and the gratitude wherever it can be found.
Oh boy, we need it. We need it. And, to have hearts that are big enough to hold both that, the grief, and all the other emotions, and including joy, especially as we head towards Adar, which of course is a month associated with joy. So complicated, so difficult, so challenging. And we're very, very blessed to have the opportunity to pause, to be able to feel all those things and to acknowledge and honor them all.
Yeah.
So in terms of the teaching, it struck me also that, of course, that line, which is so resonant, also is so descriptive of what we do here every day in terms of creating a mikdash, a sacred space. And I was thinking about, especially that Brian Stevenson quote that you brought, which I really appreciated at the end, about how one needs to be close in order to be able to touch into something. What it raised for me was the contrast between this idea of coming close to God in this Torah portion and the intimacy, but the distance that is described in Parshat Yitro, in the story of the Ten Commandments, where the people are warned to kind of keep their distance. And here's my reflection that I would invite you to respond to is how our tradition, I think, beautifully tries to capture the paradoxical nature of holiness in time and space. That, of course, one of the names for the divine in our tradition is makom, the place. And so, like you said, and you tied it in beautifully with Miriam's teachings, that one of the places, one of the mikdashes for us is the body, that God dwells, the divine dwells within the body. And that's a hallmark of Myriam's contribution, is embodied Torah, recognizing our bodies as a source of wisdom, sacred wisdom. But also betocham, I mean, within us, but also among us, and so it has to do with discerning holiness in the spaces between us also. So I just want, we also have the phrase, God is the place of the world, but the world is not God's place, that there's something transcendent and immanent. So I wanted to invite you to riff on that a little bit, because it's a Torah portion that always raises this question of, and that also that Midrash from Song of Songs brought this in too, that God needs a place, right? But that's also kind of absurd, right? God is not limited to a place. And that's a theme that recurs a lot in the Hebrew Bible and in Jewish tradition and generally. And that part is reflected, the between, hearing the divine between us, is reflected in Myriam's wonderful work in Jewish spiritual director training. And a lot of people, I see it's wonderful to have so many people here from our Kol spiritual director training program, and also students who have learned that from Myriam in different ways. So anyway, so the invitation, I wanted to invite you to kind of share, on how do we deal with this apparent contradiction between the divine residing in a place, but not.
Right. But beyond a place too.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm so grateful that we have options. Even in the word bitocham, it starts with that prefix bet, which is also the letter that begins the Torah. It can mean in, as in this physical place, as you said. It can also mean with, and it can also mean sort of among. There's all these different ways that we can understand it. And, I think what Myriam and you and all of my beloved IJS teachers, have continued to teach me is that part of the practice of being in the moment is knowing that we need something different, or we have access, or not so much access, depending on the moment. And so I'm thinking about the moments in my own life where it has meant so much to be in a place. I'm even sort of projecting forward in my own personal life, thinking about this Shabbat, like being in the sanctuary of a community that I've had the privilege to be a part of for 20 years now, and celebrate this, this family moment, this coming of age moment in a very specific place, and having a place to contain us all. And other moments in my life in which, like, the deepest sense of connection to God's presence has come through a yoga practice, on my mat. And the mat and my body are space enough. And then other moments when it's really about who I'm with. And sometimes that's not even physical presence, although that is so precious, but even a sense of ancestral presence, of feeling, hands on my back from generations before. So we have all of these different ways in, and I guess the wisdom is to trust that in different moments we find our path.
Yeah. Thank you for lifting up that we have these options. Another thing, I mentioned I was away last week at a place that is a special place in my family. And what you were saying is making me thinking about what made that place special are the memories of the things that happened there, and the people who are gone, who I associate with that place. And so even though it's about, I think, oh, it's such a sacred place, such a special place, but actually what it's about is about the things that happen there, and the people, and like you just said, kind of feeling their aliveness in my life right now. actually want to encourage people to share, if you would, places that in your life that are sacred to you in that way. That it isn't the place itself that holds the sanctity, but it is what happened that sanctified that in some way. And it's so powerful. That is, I think, a very powerful thing. And like you just said, it's not limited by time. It's in the midst of the heartbreak of loss, and I see within our community, there have been some tragic losses, and around the Kaddish, a number of people shared recent losses, or there were yard sites, and as we mentioned, with the horrific deaths of hostages that are beyond words, that we are trying to find ways to seek out holiness, right? In those moments. And if we seek it, it feels like we can touch into that.
Yeah. I'm so moved reading all of these places.
I love these.
Yes.
Yeah, keep them coming. And also please keep your
And it
far flung as Walden Pond to a grandmother's apartment in the Bronx.
yeah. It also just strikes me that in the same way that we need human language, that the Torah is written Belashon Bnei Adam, in the language of human beings, to describe something that is ultimately indescribable.
Mm-hmm.
We need places sometimes, to hold us, to hold the memories, to hold the felt sense of experiences with dear ones in times past. And we need not like diminish that in any way, even though we kind of hold that God's presence is beyond that specific place, of course.
Yeah.
Mm.
Thank you for those of you who are sharing in the chat about these places. They're all so moving and resonant.
Mm. What I love is that these physical spaces, they have their own like weight, they have, of course, their own physicality, and we carry them inside of us. And look how, it's so easy for folks to think about, to identify these places. And so it is both extraordinarily sacred to sort of do a pilgrimage of sorts, like what you're describing, Mark, this past week for you and your family. But also just to be reminded that these places live inside of us, literally in our cells, in our bones.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we
For many of us, that was really, a complete revelation in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
For many of us, Myriam has been our greatest teacher of that Torah as well. And it's great to, it's really a gift to have this awareness that at any moment we can become cognizant of that. And there's so much, my mind is like floating with all the references, including to the destruction of the temple and the Shekhinah kind of lifting off from that and being kind of almost like liberated in the world and available. And we've had such flexibility in our tradition to be able to adapt it when we've lost the places, to be able to have a sense of divine presence. And, on a very kind of mundane, smaller scale, even the origins of this community out of the pandemic, where we were isolated and lost our places of community, have been able to find new places of sacred community as well across time and space in this way.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I want to invite you to close with one more round, but
sure.
Go ahead, finish your thought first.
Just a short thought. I have a child who has unknown source of high blood pressure. Thank God he's healthy otherwise, and has to take blood pressure medication. And recently he went in for his yearly annual visit. And the doctor, who's a young doctor, took his blood pressure and it was like sky high. And he said, okay, just take a moment, take a deep breath, close your eyes, and go to a sacred place. And he closed his eyes and he took his blood pressure again, and it felt like, I'm not kidding, 30 points before our eyes. So again, this body, mind, God connection, it's so real. It's actually real. It's actually real. All right.
All right. How about one more round to take us out? I want to thank, before you do that, I want to thank Rachel and for holding her space today beautifully as always, and thank each of you for being here. And once again, thanks the board for sponsoring our sit today in honor of Rabbi Myriam Klotz. Thanks so much again, Jenny, for leading us today.
Amen. Oh God, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true, and in thanksgiving I'll be a living sanctuary for you. Ve'asuli mikdash ve'shachanti betocham v'anachnu nevarech Yah me'ata ve'ad olam.
Thanks again, Rabbi Jenny. Many blessings, everyone. If you'd like to save the chat, by the way, just a reminder that you can click on the 3 buttons down in the chat box. And so much wisdom, so much beauty in that today, as always. Thanks, everyone. Hope to see you tomorrow to practice with Rabbi Adam Kligfeld. Many blessings. Be safe and well.